friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a video all about interviewing. If you guys don't know, I am currently finishing up my second year teaching kindergarten in Washington State, and I also just finished up the interview process to move to a new job in Florida. When I shared our announcement that we were moving, I got a lot of requests to share a video all about interviewing, the questions I was asked, all of that stuff. So we're going to be doing that today. I'm going to be sharing some tips that I have for you and also the questions that I was asked during the interview process and some sample answers or things to bring up during those questions. So I hope this video is really helpful for you guys. If it is, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe so you see more of my videos, and feel free to follow along on Instagram. I would love to have you over there as well. And if you're new here, please introduce yourself down below because I would love to get to know you a little bit more. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's start with some tips I have for interviewing. Obviously, there are some advice and tips that just go without saying while you're interviewing, like making sure that you're dressed professionally, making sure that you're put together, you have your resume up to date, all of those sorts of tips. I'm not going to share those today because I feel like everyone has heard those before. So my number one tip, hands down, is to prepare beforehand. So when I prepare, I will Google search teacher interview questions. I will also look on YouTube. There are a couple of videos that I found really particularly helpful. One of those is by Pocketful of Primary. So she has a sample interview question and answer video. I used it the first time around when I interviewed for my current kindergarten job. I also used it this time around, and so that's like my number one video recommendation. She just shares a ton of really great interview questions and answers that you can listen to and get some ideas from. And then the other interview video I watched this time around was from Hello Third Grade. She did an interview video where she also had her superintendent come on and share like his advice, and that was really insightful as well. So I will have those two videos linked down below. I'd really recommend them. But once I researched the different questions, what I would do is I had a Google Doc pulled up and I would just write the questions down, and then later I would go back and add some bullet points, just like short little sentence or two, and then maybe some key words I would want to bring up or any lessons that came to mind. Also, while you're preparing, I would also recommend just brainstorming some lesson ideas that you can pull from during interviews. So I just, at the bottom of my paper where I had all the questions written down, I had like 6 or 7 different lesson examples that came to mind that I could pull from that showed different things of teaching. So to prepare, I would recommend writing down questions, brainstorming some answers, and also brainstorming some lessons you can pull from during the interview. Okay, my second tip goes along with that, and that is to practice your answers. Like, stand in front of a mirror, have your friend or spouse or whoever ask you the questions and practice saying them. I really enjoy practicing my interview question answers while I'm driving, just because I'm alone in the car. I can repeat myself a million times, and that just helps me with my answers just to make sure that they flow a little bit better and they also aren't robotic. So I would highly recommend practicing your answers all the time. My third tip is to take all interviews you are offered. So if you haven't heard my story about how I got my job in Washington, I actually was offered an interview for an ELL teacher position. And as I was first graduating, I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to be a classroom teacher. So I almost denied the interview because I was like, it's gonna be a waste of time. Like, I don't wanna waste their time, I don't wanna waste my time, but I ended up doing it. And then I ended up being offered a classroom position. So my advice to you is to take all interviews. The worst thing that can happen is that you obviously don't take the job, but you still have that practice. I would just say take all interviews because all interviews are good practice. My next piece of advice is to go to job fairs. So how I actually got my job that I just took in Florida was through going to a job fair. I don't know if all districts are offering job fairs right now because of, you know, the restrictions and things, but my district that I'm going to actually offered an online job fair, which was awesome because I am obviously very far away from Florida. I'm in Washington State. So they had an online job fair, and that is how I got my job. I just think job fairs are amazing. That's how I got my job in Washington. I just think if there's a job fair available, I would highly recommend going. You can talk to so many different schools, really get the vibe of each school and help narrow down which one you might want to work for. Okay, my fifth tip is probably almost one of the most important ones, and that is to give specific examples in your answers. So if you are asked a question, say about differentiation, how do you differentiate your lessons or your instruction to meet the needs of all your students. Say whatever you're gonna say at the beginning. You know, I differentiate my instruction by adding in different scaffolds for all students. Then go on and say, for example, and give a specific example, a specific lesson, or a specific idea that you use or plan to use in your classroom. I know as a student teacher, or if you haven't taught yet, this can be a little bit more difficult, but honestly, if you've seen something on Instagram, if you've seen your CT do something like that, your mentor teacher, or another teacher do something, you can say, I plan to do this, and that is totally okay to say. So I would definitely recommend adding specific examples into your interview question answers. Okay, my 6th tip is to research the school/district that you want to work for. Every time I've interviewed, I've always been asked, why do you want to work for us? Why do you want to work for our district? Why do you want to work for our school? And so it's really, really important that you give a specific answer as to why you want to work there. I know this can be really difficult if you're not familiar with the area, or if you have never visited before, or you don't really know that much about the school. I would definitely recommend, I printed out some pages on each school's website that I was going to interview for, so I could see their mission statement and I could pull in aspects of that in my answer. I researched the demographics of the school, and anything else I could find online, I would just research, research, so that you are prepared to give an answer to that question. Okay, my 7th tip is to be confident in yourself. I know this is so hard because, especially, at least for me, when I was going into my first interviewing process 2 years ago, I wasn't as confident because I didn't have experience. I, was just freshly graduated. So I think just finding ways to feel more confident in yourself, know that you are a good teacher, you deserve this position, you deserve to be able to be at a school that you want to be at and that, is supportive to you and stuff. And I would just recommend just remembering that and, think about ways that you can gain confidence. For me, that is practicing my answers, feeling as prepared as I can going into the interview. That really helps my confidence. And so whatever that is for you, do that to help yourself feel confident during the interview. Okay, my 8th tip may seem like a silly one, but I will give you some backstory as to why I included this. But have water with you while you're interviewing. So the first time around, when I got the job that I currently have, I did not have water with me, and I am the type of person, when I get nervous, I lose my voice. So about 3/4 of the way through the interview, I completely lost my voice. It was on Zoom, and I couldn't just get up and go get water. I guess I could have, but I didn't feel like I could. So I completely lost my voice. I couldn't answer barely any of the last questions that I was asked. I could only say a sentence. I literally could not talk, you guys. It was so embarrassing. I was so sure that I blew the interview. I was not gonna get it. And so I would highly recommend having some water with you. This time around, I had two water bottles with me just in case. Okay, my 9th tip is to contact the district's HR to see if they have any more information they can give you. For example, when I was applying to the district that I'm going to be working at, I reached out to HR to just get some clarification on certification process to see if this was even an option. Should I even be applying, or am I wasting my time? I also reached out to them just to get more information. I actually got in touch with a recruiter for the district, which I think is different than Washington State. I don't think we have recruiters, but they had a recruiter, and so they were able to tell me about the job fair. They were able to tell me about, how to go about this process and a little bit more about their district. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to HR and just saying, hey, I'm interested in your district, I'm applying. Is there anything I should know about, any job fairs, stuff like that, just to get a little bit more insight. Okay, my 10th and last tip is to prepare questions to ask them at the end of your interview. Almost in every single interview, I guarantee they're going to ask, do you have any questions for us? And I would highly recommend asking them some questions, because just as much as they are interviewing you, you are interviewing them. Honestly, the first time around, I didn't really feel this way, but this time around, I really felt this way. I wanted to choose a school that was supportive to me and that would value me as a teacher and that matched my values, that had the same things in mind that I did when it came to teaching. So I had a list of about 3 to 5 questions that, if they weren't already answered during the interview, I wanted to ask at the end. So the first one that I would ask is just, what are you most proud of about your school? I think this is really insightful as to what they think is the thing that they're most proud of about their school. Are they proud of their academics? Are they proud of their teachers? What are they proud of? It's really insightful and gives you a little bit of insight into the culture of the school. Okay, the second question, I really wanted to know this answer, and I debated whether or not to ask, but honestly I needed to know. And so the second question I would ask them is, what supports do you have in place for teachers and students to support them academically, emotionally, and behaviorally? I do not want to work at a school that is not supportive to me as a teacher and with the students that I have in my class. I want to know that I can reach out for help and that they have certain people in place to help me as a teacher. And so I would ask that question. And then the third question I would ask is, what are your expectations for teachers, specifically about planning? Because I've heard that there are some schools that require you to submit your lesson plans like every single day, or just they have different requirements for planning and submitting lesson plans and things like that. And so I wanted to know going into it, what is the expectation of me, so that I can know, is that something that I feel like matches with me and is something that I can do? And also, I'm just the type of person, if you tell me what you expect of me, then I will, know what to do. But if I don't know, then I don't know, I might not do it right. So I would ask that question as well. Okay, so now let's get into the questions I was asked during the interview process. I'm sure there are more questions that I was asked, but these are the ones that stuck out to me and that I remember. So the first question that I was asked in every single interview, no joke, is, tell me a little bit about yourself. This is pretty simple. I feel like it can be one of the most hard questions to answer though. For me personally, I don't love talking about myself, especially to other people. And so just brainstorm what you can bring up about yourself. Honestly, I said a lot about my education background. I talked about where I student taught, where I'm teaching currently, and our move to Florida, basically. Okay, the second question I was asked is, why do you want to work at our school? So as I said earlier, make sure that you research the school that you're interviewing at. Make sure you know the name of the school, make sure you know what their mission statement is, what they value, what their demographics are, stuff like that, so that you can answer that question as thoroughly as you can. The third interview question I was asked, I'm so glad I prepared for, because someone shared this question with me on Instagram and I was prepared for it. And that question was, tell me about a time you had a difficult student and what you did to support them. So basically in my answer, I just said I started tracking the behaviors, looking at what was happening before the behavior, what was happening during the behavior, and then what was happening afterwards, to see if I could find any triggers. I was able to find some, and this is what I did to address those triggers and to support that student. Try to think of a situation that you can apply for that. Okay, the fourth question I was asked was, tell me what reading instruction or what math instruction looks like in your classroom. So for example, for reading, I said we do reading rotations so that we can do small group time, and during the small group stations, I will run a station that is guided reading. I will have a station that's more phonics focused. I will have a station that is differentiated with word work activities, depending on what sight words or letters students are working on. And then I have a fourth station that focuses on technology, where students go on computers and they will use Get Epic or Starfall or something like that. So I said a big block of my reading instruction focuses on small group instruction. The other part of my reading instruction focuses on read alouds with specific learning targets that we're focusing on, phonics instruction. So I said that for reading. And then for math, I said that we will start with a whole group lesson, and then we will go into independent practice, and that is where I kind of differentiate whatever activities they're working on. And then I will also pull students to the back table to work with them on specific math skills that they are working on. The next question I was asked kind of falls along with that question, but it was just, tell me about your daily schedule in your classroom. What does each block of time look like? So I brought up that we do morning meeting in the morning to help build classroom community. We also do math instruction, reading instruction, writing instruction, and play to learn time. I think those are the ones that I brought up. And I also said we try to incorporate science, math, SEL into our instruction throughout the day. So just think about, what does your daily schedule look like in your classroom? What are the blocks of time that you include, the blocks of instruction that you have? And then kind of just give them a little insight into each area. Okay, the next question I was asked, I think in every interview as well, and that is, how do you build positive family-school relationships? So I just talked about how I build relationships with the families of my students. And so I said at the beginning of the year, I reach out to them, I send them a meet the teacher letter in the mail, just introducing myself, a little bit about the school, what our classroom runs like, and then I also reach out the first week to every single family in my classroom and just send them a little email just with, hey, so-and-so is doing such a good job, I'm so excited they're in our class, something like that, just to start building that positive relationship. I also said that I always make sure that the families in my room know that me and them are a team. We want their student to succeed. I am a support to them and they are a support to them, and we are just working together as a team. So I would definitely say that as well. I also mentioned conferences. I also mentioned, you know, that the families can email me, set up a time for Zoom, anything like that, anytime. Okay, the next question I was also asked a lot, and that is, what is your classroom management plan? So in this answer, I made sure to address that I build very clear and consistent and firm expectations for my students from day one, and we practice, 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 practice. And that's true, that's what we do. And so if there's ever a time that I'm noticing, say like while we're at the carpet, while we're transitioning, whatever the time is that I'm seeing that they're not following expectations, the first thing that I do is go back and review those expectations, because they might have forgot, or you know, they just need a reminder. So that's the first tool that I use. And then I also went into specific classroom management strategies. I use teacher versus student points on the whiteboard with a 10 frame, and I have a 10 frame, the students have a 10 frame, and they can earn points, and I can earn points if they're not following expectations. I also use individual kind of plans where I have star tickets essentially that I will give students individually that they can take home and show their parents that they were doing a really good job. If they are being safe, responsible, respectful, and kind, they can earn a star ticket. The next question I was asked is, how do you build classroom community? I talk about it at the very beginning of the year. On the first day, one of my #1 priorities is to learn every student's name as fast as I can. That is the foundation. The very first step to building a relationship is knowing each other's names. So I will try to learn their names as fast as I can. I also will start the year off with a morning meeting every single day, and that just allows the kids to, you know, we're all sitting in a circle, they can all see each other, they introduce themselves, we ask questions, answer questions, stuff like that. I also say at the very beginning of the year, we also do a classroom norm, classroom rules, anchor chart, where students have input into what they want their classroom to be like. How do they want to feel while they're at school? How do they want to be treated by other students in our class and by teachers and, you know, by everyone at our school? And what does that look like? How do we be kind? How do we be nice to each other? How do we be respectful? Stuff like that. So we go through an anchor chart, and that's kind of like the foundation, because we know that that is how we are supposed to treat others. And so those are the couple examples that I brought up. The next question that I was asked was, what was the most recent PD you attended by choice? So brainstorm what the last PD was. Did you read a book? Did you go to like a webinar? Did you go to an in-person PD? What was the last PD that you went to, and what did you learn from it? The next question was, tell me about your PLC team and how you contribute to it. So I just kind of gave them a little bit of an overview of what our PLC team looks like, who's on it, how often do we meet, and what do we talk about on it. So I talked about how we share and analyze assessment data together. We make sure that we are all aligned on the curriculum and on the right pacing. We collaborate and share ideas about how to best support our students. And I talked about how when we share and collaborate, that we all have different strengths, and being able to just share ideas really helps everyone, because we all have different strengths and things that we're really good at. And so being able to collaborate and share that is really good. The next question is, how do you use assessment data? I guarantee you are going to be asked a question about assessment, whether that is, how do you use assessment data? How do you assess your students? So I talked about how I have an assessment binder, and I use that to guide my instruction. I assess my kids informally all the time. Obviously, as teachers, you're always taking note of who can do this one skill, who needs extra practice, who am I gonna pull back to help them a little bit on whatever they're working on. So I say how I use the assessment data is to drive my instruction, what we're gonna be talking about whole group. I also use that data to plan my small groups and decide which students are going to be working on which skills, and talk about how those small groups are completely flexible all the time. I can change groups around based on what needs I see. The next question is, how do you support all students in your instruction? So I would definitely recommend bringing up differentiation. I would definitely recommend bringing up, you know, how do you support ELL students? Do you use visuals? Do you use total physical responses? Do you use small group instruction? Those are some of the things that I brought up. Okay, the next question was another tricky one. It was, how would you handle a misunderstanding with a colleague? I just said, whenever I approach a misunderstanding with a colleague, I just try to approach it with understanding where they're coming from and to know that they have positive intentions. And I gave a specific example, a small example about like a schedule conflict or whatever, but I would just keep that question, you know, make sure that you say that you would handle it while trying to understand where they're coming from, and you approach it really positively, stuff like that. Okay, and the last question I was asked was, what is your process for writing a lesson plan? I talked about how I look at the curriculum, I identify the learning target or the learning objective, just what are my students trying to learn? How am I going to get them to learn that, basically? So what activity are they gonna do? Are we gonna do like a workshop model where they're with me at the carpet, we're doing it together? I then think about, okay, so what scaffolds or how do I differentiate this lesson to meet the needs of all my students? So maybe that is, this group has a slightly different worksheet with like visuals on it to support them, or maybe I'm gonna pull a small group back to the back table while everyone else is working and I'm gonna work with them. So how am I gonna differentiate this lesson? And then also, is there any way I can make it more engaging? So maybe if we're working on word problems, I'll switch out some of the names that came from the curriculum to names of students in my classroom. Or, if I know they really like cats, maybe we'll be counting cats instead of balls, whatever. So I just think about, how do I make the lesson more engaging for my students? So that is pretty much it for today's video. I really hope this was helpful for you guys. If it was, please let me know down below, because I would just love to hear some encouragement from you guys. And if you are interviewing right now, I just wish you all the best, and I hope you find a school that you absolutely adore. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe so you can see more of my videos, and also feel free to follow along on Instagram. I post there all the time and would love to have you over there as well. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!